Welcome back to the TimCo Retail Manager course. This course focuses on real-world application development. In this video, we're going to be clearing the bug backlog. We've got a bunch of bugs in the list. We want to get rid of those so we get our application kind of cleaned up and ready to move on to the next step. Now, for those of you who are Patreon members, the $5 per month level or higher, head over to get the source code for today's video. Now, if you're new to this project, welcome. If you're just interested in the topic this video covers, I think you'll get a great introduction in a real-world setting. If you'd like to start this project from the beginning with us, there's a link in the description to get the full playlist in order. There's also a link to the Phase 1 course if you want to get up to speed a little faster and would like the source code for each step. Either way, I'd appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up. Doing so helps spread the word and ensure more people will be helped by this video. Okay, let's head over to our browser. And I've got the Azure DevOps project pulled up for the TimCo Retail Manager. Let's go to the boards. And I've already have this list filtered. Notice I have it filtered by to-do list or to-do items. So if there's items that are done, they will not show up in this list. That's all I have is to do and done. I don't have anything that's on the currently doing. If you go to the boards view, you can see that there's to do, doing, and done. So these are the things that are done, but we still have a list of things that needs to be done. Now we're just doing a really light pass at this. We're not going crazy with our work items. But what this is more, since I'm doing this as a single developer, I'm using this as a place to record all my notes of things I want to get to that I haven't yet. For example, today, we're going to go over a number of bug fixes, and most of those bug fixes have come from you, the viewer. So people have watched my video, they've tried out the TimCo Retail Manager, and they said, hey, you know what? I found this certain scenario where there's a bug, whether it's a common thing or an edge case. And they let me know. And instead of me going in and saying, okay, let me fix that, and kind of drop what I'm doing and go do that and come back, what I've done instead is I've created a work item. So if it's not already on a list, I go new work item, new issue, and then my naming convention is to say bug colon, and then whatever the bug is. And then I say to do, and I leave it alone. The key with these systems is not to go overboard with the ceremony of creating an item or an issue. Because if you go too deep into the ceremony of creating this issue, where you say, okay, let's assign it, let's figure out the priority of it, the effort involved, make sure you got a full description, and then change the area, the reason, put some discussion in place, link it. Before you know it, you've spent 10 or 15 minutes creating this ticket when it really was going to take you 5 minutes to fix the bug. That may feel like you're doing something, but in reality, you're just kind of avoiding work. And so, especially when you are a small shop, like for me, I'm just one person working on a TimCo Retail Manager. Now I have a bunch of people looking over my shoulder, which is great because you find the things that I miss. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. So be careful when you see some tutorials out there that are telling you how to go so deep into work items, what the naming conventions are, all that kind of stuff. That can be great for certain environments. But don't think that applies to every environment. I use it very lightly when it's just me or just a small team. When it becomes a larger team, yes, you need to go into more depth and have a little more organization in place so that you don't just create this big mess that no one uses. But I'm a firm believer in if it's not quick, it won't be done. I've been on large teams where we have this whole set of meetings to figure out how to do this bug system, and we have this whole huge outcome of that of these are the ways of doing it, here's the plan for doing it, and all the rest. It lasts about a month or two max, and then we're just kind of writing things on paper because it's just too hard. So just make sure that you don't make something hard for yourself. Okay, little soapbox there. Want to make sure we're clear on that. Okay, so we have a few things in here known as bug, suggestion, bug. Let's zoom in a little bit here so you can see a little better. That's probably better. Okay, if I take the filter, rats. the filter has to be on in order to, I did it again. The filter has to be on in order to shrink this list down. You can't hide the filter even though we're kind of done with it. Like I want it to go away, but it won't hide. So just note that's the problem there, why I can't kind of shrink the screen a little more. Those first three things we're not going to cover in this video, so we can scroll past that, and now we have our bugs. So let's tackle these bugs one at a time, and then we're going to put a commit in for each, but we won't push the commits until last. And then we do have it so that on the continuous integration, it will link these bugs to be to have the commit message, or the commit message, and then also the build number of when it goes through the continuous integration. And when we get to continuous deployment going, then it will have that as well, where I'll say, okay, that's the deployment as well. Okay, so we've got this set up. So let's go. I'm going to move this off a screen. I'll keep it on my screen, but you won't be able to see it. But just know this is the list. We're going to start with the user option shows before login and go down and through. Let's open that up first so you can see it. This is the other helpful thing. Note that this message right here doesn't give you a ton of information, but it's pretty simplified. But we have a description that says you can access the user menu before you sign in, which if you do that will throw an error, but then you're not allowed to log in. So that's a weird, funky issue. Okay? And that much more clearly explains what this quick little title tells you. Now, this title is clear. It's just not necessarily clear as to where that bug is or how it works. This kind of message right here is really important. And I want to thank all of you who have given me bug reports, because the replication information you gave me is invaluable. The steps to replicate the issue, really, really helpful. And I've pasted those in here. So that way I know exactly where to go and how to follow up to make sure it works. Okay? So let's go over to, I'm going to go back to my work item list here. Go back over to here, and what we're going to do is we're going to fix that issue. But first, I'm going to go to Team Explorer, and I don't have all of my options here. I need to go to the Manage Connections and double click on TimCo Retail Manager under the dev.azure.com. And that's going to bring in more of my options. Notice I have more options here, including I have my work items list, which does show me a list, but it's a little clunky because I have zoomed in font size. I have font size that's larger, and it kind of goes off a screen, and it's not really a great view anyway. I could make it a little bigger, like so, but then you got this massive screen window. So I don't typically use this. I use the web interface on a different screen or a different part of my screen when I have this open. But just know now we go to changes. There's related work items. We can add the number that we're working on. So we'll do that in just a minute. But first, we're going to view the issue. It's always good to view the issue while it's an issue before you try and fix it. Okay? So Kestrel's starting, and our WPF is starting. Our API started, but I'm going to move it off a screen. There's our login. Whoops. It's already showing. So if we log out, notice that users is still there. So I click the user, go to user management. It goes, you don't have permission to access the interact with the sales form, which that's not the sales form, but that's another issue. We hit close. Now I can't even do anything. There's no option here to log in. I have to actually hit exit. So that's our bug. So let's close this out, and we'll address that bug. So if we go to the TRM desktop UI, and in the view, we have the shell view, and that's where our menu is visible. So notice we have the users menu here. Come down here, the account is not visible because we want to make sure that's not showing. And we have this is logged in check, and that's going to fall back to collapse, meaning it's not going to show. We want to do the same thing for users. Okay, so let's copy this. Copy that. And I'm going to go up here to users, paste that in, and it should be that now users will not show unless we're logged in. Let's verify that's the case, and then we're also going to think about changing this around. In fact, I'm going to do it now. Let's add another menu item that allows us to log in. This is not strictly on this bug ticket, but it's kind of referenced there because you can't log in if you went to the user menu. And that's kind of an issue. So let's add another menu item. In fact, let's just copy and paste instead of trying to retype this. And we're going to say log in. And we will say, let's copy this right here. In fact, let's cut that. So now account's going to show all the time, but sometimes we'll have log out, but that only shows if you're is logged in. And what we'll do is we'll have another one for, and this is log in, by the way. And I don't know if we can have the underscore under the L for both, because one is for log in, one's for log out. Let's change this just in case to the I. Remember, the Alt allows you to then hit Alt A and then I for log in. So that's why we have the underscore there, is to indicate that this is the quick link when you use the Alt key. That's for using keyboard without the mouse. That's an accessibility thing. So we have log in, and we're going to try and do the same thing here. So let's actually paste this in. The same thing, only we're going to say is logged out. And we'll have a property for that then. Okay, so now we have log in and log out. And that should show us only one option based upon our login status. So now let's go over to our code, which is in the view model. Go to the shell view. We're looking for the is logged in first. Is logged in right here. And we're going to create a new property that's going to be a, I need an auto or a full property. Actually, you know what? Let's just type it out. Public bool is logged out. That's easier. And remember, let's try just returning not is logged in. Okay, why do the logic twice? We'll do it once. Okay, so this is going to give us the opposite of this. So we should only have one of them showing at a time. So that should give us this value as well. Let's give this a shot. We're testing two things. One is the users menu hidden, and then can we still go to log in even if it's not, even if we're not logged in. Okay, so let's try that. We don't have a login menu or a login method yet, so we need to make sure we get that right. Oh, come on. It kind of popped underneath my browser. Okay, so now we have login, which doesn't do anything, but we don't have a user menu, which is good. Now if we log in, we have both login and log out. So that's not great, probably because we aren't triggering the notify of property change. So we'll have to make sure we do that. So let's change that, and let's also make sure that we have the ability to log in. It actually triggers the form. Okay, so let's stop this, and now let's create the log in method and trigger the is logged in. Let's do a Control F here in the current document for is logged in. There we go. We have these two spots right here. So we're going to notify a property change for is logged in and is logged out. Okay, and we'll make sure there's no other references. There's not. Cool. So that takes care of that problem. But now we have to have the menu option for log. We have log out. And what does that do? That does this code right here. We need to have some type of code to give us the login screen. So let's come up to the very top here, and we have this right here, the activate the log in. So let's do the same thing. When a user says, I want to log in, so we're going to do, we don't need a public async task. We just need, actually we do, public async task log in. And then in here, we're just going to do this right here, which activates the item asynchronously. Okay. Just making sure that we actually do something asynchronously, and we're going to await it. Okay. So now we're going to log, when we say log in, we're going to go to the login view, which right now we have no way of knowing. Actually, you know what? We do have a way. This is a temporary thing to do, but let's not activate the login view when we start. That just allows us to test to make sure that the login button works. This is really only for if we had a case where for some reason this happened, where we have this white screen. They can still go log in. There we go. That works. When they log in, it's only a log out option. When they log out, goes to the login form, is only the log in option. Perfect. So I think that takes care of both the kind of bug we saw as well as the actual bug we saw. So let's close this all out. Let's uncomment that. Don't forget that. Now we have a working application that's going to log in or have a login screen automatically, but you can also go and click on it to say, hey, log in again. Let's try one more thing. Now that it's right, now it's set up correctly. Let's try one more thing, which is to try going to the login form after you're already there. And it seems like nothing really happens. If I wipe this out, I'm wondering if I go to the login screen. Yep, it creates a new instance of that form. So it does go to a new instance of it every time. But when you finally use it, you can go and actually start doing stuff. Cool. You can also go to the users menu now. There we go. So that's all working, which means it's time to commit our code. Now this was item number 25. So let's go to our commit. Let's select our 2 items to stage. Let's go to related work items and say ID number 25, hit add, which says bug user option shown before login. So we're saying this is related, and we're going to say fix user menu showing before login. The user menu no longer shows before login. And the other thing we did was we fixed we added login. Added a login menu option in case of another issue like this. All right. So we're going to commit staged, but we're not going to do anything more than that. We're not going to sync it. Okay. So now if you go to sync, there's one outgoing thing to do. We're not going to send it yet. And the reason why is because we have a continuous integration system I don't want to have that keep going over and over and over again when we're doing a bunch of little things. I'd rather send all the stuff at once and let it do one big build. Okay, so that is this bug right here. Now we're going to go to this one. This is a fun one. This is one that I totally missed, which is that when we upgraded the .NET Core in the I think the API project. Yes, the API project. I forgot to add into the app settings.json file the tax information. And so now the lookup fails in the config helper for the get tax rate. Again, really helpful because I know exactly where to look for that bug. So let's go fix that bug. This is bug number 26. So in the API, the API project in the library, we have config helper. Let's close others. We have this configuration manager.app settings tax rate, which is the old school way of getting this information. In fact, this isn't a great option either because we already have a to-do up here. It says move this from config to the API. Well, this is the API. So I think the reason why is we copy and paste this from our WPF project, which also has a very similar, I believe, in that library. We have something very similar here. Config helper, which does a lookup. This is the old school way of doing things as well. Notice that the WPF project as well has an app.config file, which is the old school way of doing things. We need to move that over to an app settings.json file. That's something for the list. But for now, let's solve this problem. And we could just say, okay, let's just go to the correct location. In fact, this code would work if we went and added an entry to our TRM API, go to app settings.json, add a tax rate setting. That would actually work, but it's not the right way of doing things. That's the really, really quick way of doing things. That's not the right way of doing things. So instead, what we're going to do is rethink this process. Let's figure out where is this getting called. So you go to one reference here, and it says, okay, that's where it's being called. One spot. Well, I can double click on that, and it's in the save sale, which is the SalesData method. So in SalesData, we look up the tax rate. We get it once, we use that multiple times throughout the application to calculate the tax. So let's do this better. First of all, is there a case where we want to send the tax rate on through the API? And the answer is yes. We actually have that to do in there that says, hey, send it through the API, don't just get it from the config settings. Well, we are the API, so why don't we create a place for the API to return this and use it here? So let's do that. So we're going to create a public decimal. Is it a decimal type? It is a decimal type. Public decimal, and we're going to say, let's call this get tax rate, like so. Notice it is a public method. So let's move some of this code. Let's grab this code right here. And copy and paste the entire thing, except for the output. And now I'm going to do this, where I say output equals output divided by 100. Because remember our tax rate, when we stored it in the config file, let's go to our config file here. We stored it as 8.75. Now, some of you debate this with me. Maybe you should, the idea is maybe you should store it as 0.0875, which is clear that's the percentage. But typically when you talk about percentages, you say it's 5% or it's 25% or it's 10%. You don't say it's 0.01. So that's what we're doing. We're storing a percentage here. Could you do it a different way? Sure, absolutely, not a problem. But we're going to store it in the whole number form and convert it right here. But we're going to do it all in one step. So now I can say return output, and we're doing both steps. We're doing the config helper call, and we're doing this divide by 100. So now what we can do is say tax rate equals get tax rate. And that's it, done. Now, of course, we have some issues here. Right now, I have a system.configuration errors exception, and I have a ConfigManager issue. Well, we're actually going to say I want I configuration config control dot to create and initialize a field. And instead of this right here, what we're going to say is, underscore config dot get value, which we don't have the correct entry here, so we need to add a NuGet package for this. So let's do that. Let's go to our NuGet packages for our library. Right-click on dependencies, manage NuGet package. Let's look at what we have installed. Let's uncheck the box for including preview releases. And I don't know that it's actually in abstractions. I think it's in the regular Microsoft.extensions.configuration. But I may be wrong. Maybe it needs an update. So let's do this. Let's make sure that it's the latest version. So let's change to the latest version. Or we can go to updates here and just update this. Not logging abstractions. Let's go to configuration. Let's choose this one. And say update to the latest version. And say accept. And once we do that, let's come back over here to get value, do Control J on it. And see if we have, let's try it again, is not have the right thing. Because that's what it should be. So let's go back. I believe the issue is that we need one more NuGet package, which is Microsoft.extensions.configuration.binder. That one right there. Let's install that. I believe this is the one that adds the namespace. Or if we do Control J now, get value shows up in the list. Excellent. We didn't have to do this, but this is a really helpful extension. It's just so much easier, I find. So I'm going to say, let's call it tax rate again, just to be consistent. You don't have to, but let's go to appsettings.json, and under right down here, we could actually put it inside of a parameter or an object actually. So let's do it inside of. You don't want to have just tax rate right on the root here. So let's call this object something like app settings, which is kind of redundant. It is kind of redundant, isn't it? Let's leave it alone. Let's just do tax rate. And tax rate is going to be 8.75. Okay? And I know I did change the casing on this. I want to change it here and be consistent across the board. Because right now we have everything else is the Pascal case. There's no reason to create a camel case version. So let's do that. And now that should pull the tax rate from the right location. Let's get rid of our commented outline. And now the only thing I have left is this configuration errors exception. If we Control dot here and add the using system.configuration, we could add that namespace and it should work. Interesting that it needed that. Not sure if that's the best way of going. We'll think about that as we go, but for right now it works. So get tax rate now is in place. We're not calling config helper. anywhere. Notice the 0 references here. And it's kind of small, so you can't see that. It's right there. I can't even highlight it. And if I zoom in, it won't help. But that 0 reference is there. Actually, I might be able to do this. Let me see if I can. There we go. How about that? So 0 references means that it's not being called anywhere, which means I can get rid of this method, which means I can get rid of this class, which means I can get rid of everything. So let's do that. Let's just get rid of config helper entirely. Let's delete it off the map. So I can't really, let's see if I can get down here. A little better. There we go. Delete. It says, yes, you're going to delete that entire thing. I am. It's gone. So with that being gone, now you're one step closer because we have our information in the appsettings.json file, and we are calling that file right from a get tax rate, which is public, but it's not yet in the interface. So let's do a control dot on this method and say pull member up to base type, or pull get tax rate up to SalesData. That's the one you want. Put it in the interface. All right. So now it's in the interface, which means that we now have access to it wherever we call, for example, save sale. Let's go to save sale references. And in the sale controller, that's the one. Let's go right there. So now we have the sale controller. We could actually put another get in here. So in this one, we can authorize it for really anybody if you wanted to. In fact, let's do that. Let's create a new method, a new get, and we're going to say get tax rate. There's no reason not to allow everybody. So allow anonymous. And it's going to return a decimal and get tax rate. So SalesData dot get tax rate. So now we have an API endpoint we can call to get the tax rate. Now we still haven't done anything in the WPF application. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole tonight, but this allows us to at least have it exposed on the API. Now we can go the next step later and hook it up when we're going through our to-do list in our code comments, which really our to-do list and our code comments should probably move over to our bug list. So, or our suggestion list, depending on what they are. Okay? But now let's make sure that the tax rate is going to be called correctly. So let's do this. Let's run our API and just do /sales/get tax rate on a get call. We don't even have to log in for this, which is really nice because I can just pull the browser over and make the call. So once the browser launches, I'm going to bring it over. So it's going to be /API/sale/get tax rate. And if you notice, the tax rate is 0.0875 or 8.75%. Cool. So that works, which means that when we call, we've really tested everything we need to test, because when we call the save sale, the big thing here was we were calling that config method, which bombing out because it's looking for the app config file or the web config file. It's not finding it or find that setting. And so we fixed all that by saying get tax rate. Well, the API endpoint also calls that. Therefore, we've tested this, that it works. So therefore, we're good to go. I could go through and test a complete sale and make sure it goes all the way through, but I don't think we need to do that. So now we again have something to commit. So let's commit our items. Let's say stage. And then we're going to say this was work item number 26. Okay, add. And our commit message is fix missing tax rate. So added back the tax rate to the config and added an API endpoint for getting the tax rate. Commit to stage, but don't sync. Now, if we go to the sync tab, you'll notice we have 2 commits. All right, but again, we're not going to sync quite yet. We have more bugs to go over. So let's come back here, back to the work items. We've done 25 and 26. In fact, we can go to our boards if we want to. This is a little more fun. First of all, if you do the drop down here, you can say assign it to Tim. That way I get credit whenever it's completed. And then we can just click and drag it over this done column, which changes the status to done. Typically, I wait until we have until we've actually done the integration and then the deployment. But for tonight's exercise, we're just going to do move it over. Let's kind of see that you can do it there, or you can do it by changing it here. But it's kind of fun to do it by drag and drop. All right, so available roles does not clear properly. I spot a small bug in the user display view model.load roles. Very descriptive. So now I know exactly where to go. User display view model and the load roles. We need to clear available roles first. Available roles.clear. Otherwise, if you have other users after selecting a couple of them, all available roles will be added to the array. Okay, so you have an issue here where when you have the available roles, in fact, let's look at this. We only have one user, so we can't really necessarily replicate this, but we can at least see what the issue is. So let's bring this over here, log in, and then go to users, user management, and see the available or current roles. The available roles list here is this manager because these are the ones that I don't have yet. Now, if you had multiple people, what this person is saying is that if I selected a different person, let's say they didn't have cashier, well, now it would say cashier and manager, even though they are a manager, because we never cleared this list when we switched users. And probably the same thing is true the other way, where we haven't cleared out this list properly. We'll check that as well. But then if we go back to our backlog, go back to work items, I noticed that bug number 30, if you add or remove a role without selecting a role, it crashes the app. All right, so if you add or remove a role without first selecting a role, the program crashes. My guess is the user display view model, you'd want to add try catch for the add selected role method and the remove selected role method to catch if the user.id is null and or the user role is null. Okay, so we have 2 bugs that are in the same area that are very, very similar. So we're going to work on both of these, bug number 30 and bug number 28 at the same time. But let's replicate bug number 30. So if I say remove right now, I have not selected a current role. Or if I were to say add role right now before selecting a role to add. Either way, I click it and it's going to crash the application with an exception. So let's fix both of these issues. First, let's look for the load roles. There we go. And so load roles, what it does, it gets all the roles and just starts adding to the available roles. Okay, but it doesn't clear available roles first. Well, that seems pretty straightforward. Available roles dot clear. Now we load the roles. We're going to clear the available roles first and then start adding if it's not in the list. Okay, so that takes care of that bug. That was a really simple little fix. But now let's talk about the adding or removing. So add selected role or remove selected role. That crashes when the selected user role or selected available role are null. And possibly if selected user.id is null. Let's check that, make sure that's true as well. it's going to give us a chance to run this code, make sure nothing breaks with our little fix here. It shouldn't have. So log in. And now you go to users, user management. There we go. So if I haven't selected anybody yet and I hit remove, notice the selected user is null as well. Therefore, we have a problem there as well. So if you can look at the locals window and go to this and see the selected user is null and also the selected user role is null. So we're doing a check on a property of a null, and we're doing a check on this null value. So let's fix that. So what we're going to do is create a property, public bool, and this is going to be a can add selected role. This is a feature of Caliburn Micro. So this name is actually very important. It's based upon naming convention. This is one of the things that Caliburn Micro provides for us with their automatic wiring. And that's why we use Caliburn Micro is for some of that automatic work. If you want to do this manually, what you do is you would bind to the enabled property a property. So you bind this property to the enabled property of the Add Selected Role button. But Caliburn Micro takes care of that binding for us based upon the fact that I took this button's name and added can in front of it and returned a Boolean. This will say whether or not we can add the selected role. Okay, so it's going to gray out the button until you've fulfilled all the criteria. And those criteria are, I can just do a return statement here. Let's make it an if to make it a little clearer. If selected user is null or selected available role is null, return false, else return true. Okay. Now what I could do is I could have taken this sentence right here, this if, I could put a not in front of this and then say return not this. Okay. That's a little less clear than this. So I want to be a little more clear. Therefore, I write a little bit more code, but now my code is more readable. So selected user is null or selected available role is null, return false, meaning they cannot add a selected role. Let's do the same thing for remove. In fact, let's copy and paste it because it's pretty much the same logic down here. Notice we need to change the name to can remove selected role and change selected user role, but selected user stays the same. So if selected user role or selected user is null, return false, otherwise return true. But we're not quite done yet because we need to make sure that we update this whenever they make a change. So when a selection is made, we need to refresh these two values, can remove selected role and can add selected role. I'm going to copy that one. And if we look up here, I believe we have a notify a property change on user roles, available roles. Once those change, on selected username, whenever you change a selected username or selected user role, or up here we have selected user. So we have a number of places where things are changing. So up here we have our list of users. That's not what we need to worry about. Selected user, when this one changes, we need to trigger that notify of property change. So notify of property change, can remove selected role. Let's add this one more time and change this one to can add selected role. I'm going to copy that. So whenever the user changes, let's trigger those properties. Okay. Now, in theory, these properties are still going to return false because nothing is selected in the roles list. But we want to check to make sure. Now, the selected user role has changed. Let's trigger the can select and can remove. Actually, you know what? We don't need to trigger them here because we know they're going to clear the list. So let's get rid of that one. And selected user role changed. Which one is that? Is it can add or can remove? So selected user role. Let's come down here. Selected user role is can remove. So let's go back up there and just change the remove. Or just allow the can remove. And then available user role is the other one, which is add. So we're just triggering which button will show based upon what you've selected. So selected username, that we should leave it alone. User roles, available role. I think we've got it set. Let's check this out. It takes a little bit of thinking through the logic of it to make sure you get all the information correct. So might not get it right the first time, and that's okay. Don't be afraid to get it wrong and try again. All right, so notice they're grayed out. I can't click these. If I click Tim, I still can't click anything. But if I click admin, now I can remove. If I can't add though, but if I select manager, I can now add a role. If I add a role, now all three are there. I can't add another role. Of course, there's no roles to add, but I can come up here, select manager and remove. Now manager's in this list, but notice I can't remove anything else because nothing else is selected. So now that works the way we intended, and we have a nice user interface because our user interface is telling the user, hey, we can't do this because you haven't allowed us to do anything. There's nothing to do yet until you go, oh, okay, admin, cool, I can remove that. Or, oh, dropdown, which we need to make this dropdown bigger. It should default to at least a reasonable size. Otherwise, it kind of hides over here. But once you select something, cool, I can add that role. So that's the fix for those buttons. So now those buttons will only show if we are set up properly, where we, let's log out here and log in, go to users. That's still a clunky process. But now these aren't enabled until we select something. Okay? So that solves two problems. It solves the problem of bug number 28 and bug number 30. So with one page of fixes, let's stage that. Let's add our bug number 28. And we're going to add bug number 30. And our message is going to say bug fixes in, and this is the user management. Cleared available roles when switching users and disabled buttons until the user selects a value to use with the button. Okay, good enough. Again, commit staged. And now let's come back over here, and we can open this up if you want and switch this value. But it takes so long to do this. Say done, save, go back. I'm not a big fan of that. I believe you can do it. You can't do it here. So I usually just go over to my boards and I come down, and first of all, I didn't assign that to anybody. Let me assign it to me. I like credit. Okay, so now that's done, and let's assign this one to me too because I did that. But now I just drag it over. Now I can come back to work items and see that I have just one bug left. And that bug is a bad namespace in authenticated user. So again, great description here. I'm not complimenting myself. These are copy and paste from you, the user, who gave me the information. So thank you for this. This is very helpful. In the TRM Desktop UI.library project, okay, so it's the WPF libraries library project, the authenticated user model uses the wrong namespace. Okay, let's figure that out. So let's close all of this. Go back to our Solution Explorer. Let's collapse down our API. Don't need to show that. Let's go to our library, and we need to look at the authenticated user model. It says TRM Desktop UI.models. Well, TRM Desktop UI.library.models. That's incorrect. Well, there's actually a fix for this. Usually, change namespace to TRM Desktop UI.library.models. That's a control dot, which is the suggestions and help. So if you right-click on it, you can also say Quick Actions and Refactoring, which again is control dot. And let's just click that, and it's going to change that, which also is going to change any other place that uses that using statement. So now let's just make sure we do a rebuild here to make sure it all works. Because if you change a namespace, you need to make sure that you have all the places that it references changed. Otherwise, you'll have an issue. Now let's run this project and just make sure that we can still log in. This is the authenticated user, so it should work. We should be able to test it works just by logging in and making sure that it still logs in, and it does. So we can still go to user management. We can still, mess around here. We can still log out. We can still exit the application. So it's all working. We just changed that namespace. It's a little thing, but it's important to make sure we do that. Always be consistent. Okay, so that was bug number 29. And actually notice right here, we have some changes in not only the authenticated user, but also API helper and the interface, the iAPI helper. Let's right click on iAPI help or API helper and say compare the unmodified. We'll see what we changed. Notice we now have a using for TRM Desktop. We're removing the using for TRM Desktop UI.models. We're not using that because we changed to TRM Desktop UI.library.models, which was already there. Right there. So we just get rid of it. And in the API helper, compare, same thing. We changed this using from being the old namespace to the new namespace. So we're good to go. We've got that fix in place, and it fixed all of our locations, which is 3 different places. So we can now stage these changes, and we can associate this with work item number 29. We can say fix bad namespace, changed a namespace to be correct. Simple enough. Commit stage. Now, since this is our last bug, and let's go back to this bug and change this to done and make sure it's assigned to me and hit save. Now that's our last bug on the list. We do have a suggestion. We'll leave that for later. And we do have a couple other things to do, but those are other videos. So that's our last bug. Therefore, we'll go to sync. And now let's make sure we do a fetch first to see if there's anything on the server that we don't have locally. There's not. Therefore, we can hit push and push all these to the server. Once we do that, what it's going to do is it's going to trigger in our pipeline, we have our continuous integration. Notice we have this icon that says queued. Well, we can click on this and notice we have a new queued build, which is now running, which you can watch through the process if you want. What it's going to do is it's going to build our latest code. So it's not going to build every commit. It's going to build just the last commit and make sure that it builds successfully. All right, once it's done that, it will do a new deployment as well. All right, so that is complete. I waited for a little bit, actually walked away for a little bit. But now that is complete. So if we go back to the boards real quick, and let's go to the board, just pull up those items. Let's just pull, for example, bug number 30. If we come down here now to our under development, we can see that it was in this commit. So there's the commit ID, the bug fixes and user management. And then it was integrated into the build, this build 5 minutes ago, and that succeeded. So it's updating this bug with more information about what happened to it based upon the build process and based upon check-in, all the rest. So that is a continuous record of that bug. So you look at this later and say, hey, we said we fixed that, but it didn't really get fixed. What do we do there? Well, you can click on this and go, okay, well, it was this commit. Let's click on that and go right to that commit. And there's the commit, there's the changes. You can look at it and see what changes there were. Okay, let's go back to that issue. Let's look at when it was actually integrated into the build process. Well, let's click on that, and there we go. There is the integration, and we can go and look at, what happened. There's the job. We can go through the whole job and see, all of what happened in here. For example, the build process WPF, there's the build process. So you can kind of do a history of what went on. And the release is the same thing. So you can track and see when was it released and, what happened to it. So if now I go back to the boards and look at the at number 30 again, we should see that it was actually released as well. Oh, it's not even showing released. Let's go over to our pipelines, go to release, and let's edit this release. It may not be triggering. Let's go to our options, integration, report deployment status to work. All right. So now we're going to report that back to the work items and also to the boards. We could say that it is in development as well. So notice we can change the status of an item in the boards to say, hey, it's in development. We can also do a Jira and update the status badge, but I think that's good enough. So let's just add board status updates. So now that anytime I do a new deploy, it will do that on those items as well. Okay, so it didn't do it for this one, no big deal. It will do it from now on for our work items. So whenever you see a work item that is completed, you can also kind of track back and find out why it was completed, what happened, where was it committed to, where was it integrated, and then where was it deployed. And we'll have multiple of those deployment steps because you'll deploy once to dev, another time probably to staging or test, and then to production. At least probably those 3 steps, maybe more. So you'll probably see multiple deployments here. But that gives you a lot of information about kind of that progress of that bug. All right, so that's all our bug fixes, and we actually integrated and deployed our bug fixes as well. So with that, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and as always, I am Tim Corey.